Hi, I'm Mike Vernick. This video is going to focus on the section of the OSTP NSPM-33 guidance addressing disclosure requirements. Since Francis Collins sent out his letter in August of 2018 to the NIH research community raising concerns about so-called foreign influence, questions of disclosure have been a very challenging area for the research community.
The community has faced a situation where certain sponsors have developed more robust guidance, but it isn't always consistent.
This has created a number of challenges. First, it's made it very difficult to develop policies, procedures, and business processes that allow them to comply with sponsor requirements, given that they have to meet multiple different requirements. Second, the variation across sponsor requirements has made training initiatives particularly challenging because research institutions currently find themselves having to educate their faculty and research administrators on a variety of different sponsor requirements. So, what the NSPM-33 guidance seeks to do is to achieve greater consistency across the federal government by developing standardized templates and accompanying instructions to address disclosure requirements. Particular areas of focus will be on biosketches and current and pending support, sometimes called other support. The guidance aims to have these templates developed within the next 120 days. While standardization across the government certainly has some upside, the devil's going to be in the details. For example, a number of major sponsors, NIH and NSF, among others, have already taken steps to improve their guidance and provide new forms and new requirements that they believe will facilitate improved disclosure from the research community. It's unclear how the NSPM-33 standardized templates will impact those efforts. Expectations for greater standardization across the federal government are high, but it's going to be important to see how these standardized templates and instructions are rolled out over the next several months. Shifting gears a little bit away from standardized templates, we wanted to cover next the mechanics of disclosure as laid out in the NSPM-33 guidance. The guidance focuses on particular cohorts of individuals within the research community. Tier 1, which includes, for our purposes, principal investigators and other senior or key personnel working on federal projects. Tier 2 includes peer reviewers and members of advisory boards and panels. We're going to focus on the Tier 1 personnel. One note on personnel covered by the NSPM-33 guidance is it explains that agencies shouldn't seek to expand disclosure requirements more broadly than what is laid out in the guidance and the FY 2021 National Defense Authorization Act. If you take a look through the chart that's included in the NSPM-33 guidance, it's going to look relatively familiar to you from the perspective of those who are already familiar with NIH and NSF disclosure obligations. There are, however, some differences. We're not going to try to focus on all of those today, but there are just a few that we wanted to highlight for you. The first area that I'd like to cover is consulting. Consulting is an area where there has been significant uncertainty for several years when it comes to what exactly has to be disclosed. The NSPM-33 guidance provides that consulting that falls outside of an individual's appointment and that is separate from institution's agreement must be disclosed. That guidance borrows somewhat from NIH and somewhat from NSF, but it also continues some of the questions that have surrounded consulting for a long period of time. For example, it remains unclear to many within the research community what separate from institution's agreement means. The guidance would also exclude consulting that is permitted by an individual's appointment and that is within an institutional outside activities policy. In that sense, it's consistent with NSF's approach. If read literally, what this would mean is that consulting that is disclosed and approved would not have to be disclosed. Another area that's worth noting when it comes to consulting is that the NSPM-33 guidance doesn't include the word research. If we compare that to NIH, particularly NIH's current FAQ on consulting, NIH focuses on consulting that involves research. Now that said, there's other guidance from NIH that makes reference to consulting without the word research. So the short answer here is that you can see that consulting is probably going to remain an area where there's some uncertainty and confusion, regardless of how things are implemented under the NSPM-33 guidance. The final note I'd make on consulting is that the NSPM-33 guidance admonishes the research community to take care not to allow researchers to treat participation in foreign talent programs, a subject that we'll cover in a moment, as consulting. The NSPM-33 guidance provides a handful of definitions that, if implemented across the entire federal government, would be meaningful. We'll talk about just a couple of those. The first definition that I'd like to cover is the NSPM-33 definition of a foreign talent recruitment program. The guidance explains that a foreign talent recruitment program is an effort organized, managed, or funded by a foreign government or foreign government instrumentality to recruit science and technology professionals or students. The guidance also includes a wide array of indicia of a talent program that may be helpful to institutions when assessing whether an agreement is or is not a talent program agreement. I'd also note that the definition includes a rather broad concept of compensation, including research support and career advancement opportunities. The next definition that I'd like to touch on very briefly is current and pending or other support. As a general matter, the NSPM-33 guidance is roughly consistent with those from NIH and NSF, although there are some language differences that may become relevant as standardized templates and instructions are rolled out in coming months. As a general matter, achieving some level of consistency in the concept of current and pending or other support will be quite helpful to the research community because it will allow them, as I mentioned previously, to achieve greater consistency in their own policies, procedures, business processes, and training initiatives. One area where the research community has long sought assistance from the federal government is when it comes to making corrections to incomplete or inaccurate disclosures. The NSPM-33 guidance includes just such assistance. It explains that federal agencies should develop simple and straightforward ways to facilitate corrections of those inaccurate or incomplete disclosures. It will be important to see how that works in practice, but as a general proposition, having that simple and straightforward way to make corrections will be welcomed by the research community. The final point on disclosures that I'd like to cover today is that the NSPM-33 guidance is going to put into place a system where research institutions are going to have to certify that they have made their research community aware of disclosure requirements and that failure to comply with those requirements may result in civil or criminal liability. This is a concerning element of the NSPM-33 guidance for a number of reasons. For example, how are institutions going to ensure that their faculty have been made aware of all disclosure requirements? Does that mean mandatory training? Would that be sufficient? The certification is also, of course, something that raises the specter of potential False Claims Act risk for institutions. So bottom line here is that this certification requirement is something that research institutions will probably want to monitor closely as NSPM-33 guidance is rolled out over the coming months.